The big news, the big story of the day is the appointment of Tito Mboweni as the new finance minister. He is a former Labour minister under the Nelson Mandela administration. So what does Labour think of it? We're joined now by COSATU's Nhlanhla on the line. Good evening to you. Your reaction as the Labour movement. It's round two, in a sense, with Tito Mboweni.
Look, thank you very much for the opportunity. The focus for us was that whoever the president appoints, it must be somebody who has a proven record of clean governance. And we think to that respect, Mr. Mboweni, having served with us when he was the Minister of Labour and also served as the Governor of Reserve Bank, we think he carries no baggage of mismanagement or mishandling of the financial resources of the country. So in that respect, we welcome his appointment.
Philosophically, of course, as you will well know, he's had a number of run-ins with the Labour sector, not always bending to your demands. And particularly, of course, he comes from a time when the fiscal policy of South Africa went in a direction that didn't necessarily always please Labour as a sector. What do you expect him to do now?
We hope that he will appreciate that the situation that we are in, following the presidential job summit, where the emphasis of jobs was the talk of town, he will appreciate that we have no time to waste, but to act and act decisively in trying to retain jobs and create new jobs.
From your point of view, what are some quick wins for the new finance minister?
Look, the summit itself have identified a number of areas where money could be injected to the economies that can create jobs. We don't know what will be in the medium-term policy statement, but we hope that as an institution, not only him, because I think it's coming too late to add value to what might have already been agreed, was that we're looking for huge stimulus to be injected in the economy so that it can create the demand side and employers to be able to produce products that the country will be able to buy and be able to reactivate the economy. So in that regard, we appreciate the space that might not be enough for him. But I think he has been following up as to what was happening, the debate and the discussion, and we hope as an experienced politician, he will be able to play a meaningful role moving forward.
Of course, we've seen the resignation of Nhlanhla Nene. COSATU, as early as last year, was calling for the resignation of other cabinet members. Is that something that you're still going to push for?
I think those are coming.
All right. As dramatic as that. We'll leave it there with the Congress of South African Trade Unions, Nhlanhla, on the line, reacting to the appointment of the new finance minister, Tito Mboweni. I still have my two guests in studio, Owen Gomo and Stephen Gruetus. Let's start with you, Owen. It's a throwaway comment you made during the break that, if you think about the international investors who have to deal with the South African finance minister, in just a number of years, they've had to deal with four, not so much Des van Rooyen, but certainly moving from Pravin Gordhan to then, of course, we know Nhlanhla Nene, and then, of course, Malusi Gigaba, and now Tito Mboweni. It's quite a lot to take in.
It's quite a lot to take in, and let's remember as well that these guys are sitting managing trillions of dollars, and then here is a country in South Africa whose GDP is worth $370 billion. we're not exactly that big a mark in their portfolios. They could say, you know, these guys are not serious about running the economy properly, especially a finance ministry that is so sensitive in a difficult time like this for emerging markets, given what's going on in tech.
Because they won't be au fait with all the intrigues.
Exactly. I mean, at least you and I understand what's going on the ground, but the internationals will be like, are you sure you're the Minister of Finance? You're the fourth guy we're seeing in about 4 years, you know? So what's going on there? So my hope is that Mr. Mboweni's introduction into this ministry is not going to be a short-lived one. You know, maybe it's not. I'm hoping it's not going to leave until just before the elections. I hope it's going to be here for about 5 years to be able to help the president implement all these things that he's spoken about. You know, the reshuffling of the budget. To boost infrastructure spending, etc. I hope it's going to be there. It's difficult for international investors, in my view, to take us seriously if we continue to change ministries like this.
Well, you heard David Maney. I mean, he's a politician, he has to go there, but it's one thing to tweet things because, you know, you no longer have to live up or answer for your tweets. But we do know Tito Mboweni has spoken out in support of a sovereign wealth fund. He's spoken out in support of some form of ownership by the state of land and mining companies, for example. How does all of this play out with him now?
Look, I think it's changed the stance probably on some of those things, especially on nationalization. The land debate is always going to be a difficult one. We need to hear what his latest pronunciations are around that. But I think what I'm interested in is how he's going to foster the conversation around SAA, for example, you know, that keeps draining the fiscus.
Talking about tweets, Stephen, let's have a look at something he has tweeted before. I'll come to it in a moment. And it's all about, of course, whether or not he would return. And I mean, you would know this. Timing in politics is everything.
Absolutely. And I think what Tito Mboweni was signaling at the time was that the time wasn't right. Now the time for him is right.
What's changed?
I think various things. I mean, firstly, his president needs him. And I think that wasn't the case before. And I think that's important. You know, we should also not forget the important symbolism of appointing Nhlanhla Nene back to the finance ministry, one of the first acts undertaken by President Cyril Ramaphosa just after he came into office. It was really saying, it was reversing what had happened that night in 2015 when then President Jacob Zuma removed Nhlanhla Nene. And I think, frankly, that's why Ramaphosa did it. It was one of the reasons. And that was an important moment for Ramaphosa, and I think for Nhlanhla Nene, but also for the nation. It was marking a sort of a symbolic end to what had happened and what had happened over the 2 years before that. Now all of that's, you know, come away, and so in a way what Ramaphosa probably did, and I'm sure they have a very long association as well if you look at their histories, is he would have said, look, frankly, I need you. I think there's a much bigger issue though, and I think this is important, is that it suggests that when you, in a way, and what Mboweni had sort of said was you shouldn't retread or recycle old leaders. The fact that the ANC is doing it now suggests that it has not grown any people into the position of finance minister. You know, and that if Nhlanhla Nene goes, well, Mondleki Ngobele, who's the deputy minister, former mayor of Ekurhuleni, is not seen as suitable. Why not? Why, if he isn't, why was he appointed deputy minister, if you know what I mean? I'm sure Nhlanhla Nene would say, well, I was deputy minister once and I wouldn't have wanted to be minister then. Again, because the timing wasn't right. So I think this speaks to all sorts of issues within the ANC. And I think what it says is that the situation has changed so much, and Ramaphosa, frankly, needs him.
Well, you also heard Kosatu's Nhlanhla saying there's more to come. I mean, where and how far does this roller coaster go?
Well, you know, frankly, it's striking. I think 10 days ago we were talking about Ace Magashule. You know, 3 weeks ago, I don't think we'd yet seen the front page picture. Well, it wasn't on the front page, incidentally, but the picture of Ace Magashule and former President Zuma meeting. Now, suddenly we're all talking about Nhlanhla Nene. I think this roller coaster goes quite some way, by the way. I think it's going to be like this for a little while. And I think it's going to be like this again because of the Nasrec result, because of what's been happening in the ANC is structural, not just personality driven. And I think what you have are different groups of people with different interests. They form themselves into factions that don't last as long as they used to in some ways. And if you look at the ANC's own discussion documents, they will sort of talk a bit about this.
Well, let's look at the tweet then from Tito Mboweni. I mean, it's a long time since February when he would have tweeted this. Against the wisdom of my team, please don't tell them this. It's between us. I'm not available for Minister of Finance. You cannot recycle the same people all over again. It's time for young people. We are available for advisory roles, not cabinet. We have done that. Been there, done that, he had said, but as you say, the president needs him, tumamina.
Yes. The other thing is that when he tweeted that, he might already have known that it wasn't going to be him. And a politician always likes to get in front of something like that. You know, if you know the future, you're going to try and hint at it because you look great afterwards. Julius Malema will tell you about the power of that.
Right, final question for the two of you. He calls you into his office tomorrow morning. What do you advise him? Owen, let's start with you. What are some key wins for him? Sure wins, guaranteed wins, easy fruit?
I would tell him that there's no guaranteed wins and it's not going to be an easy road for him. But I think I'd advise him to have a look at this midterm budget statement. And if he doesn't find that the small businesses or small enterprises have been given a big chunk of the allocation, I think he should change that, Bongani, because in my view, if we're fighting unemployment, you need to make sure that small business has got the support.
Can you do that? I mean, we've just had the Jobs Summit and small business was essentially left out of that discussion.
It was left out. I think that's why he has to focus on that. Like he keeps talking about young people, you need to give young businesses a chance to thrive and to employ people out there. And importantly, Bongani, I think that he needs to start packing his bags for that roadshow offshore as well. And we wish him all the best out there in terms of explaining why he's the fourth guy we're seeing after a period of 4 years. And importantly, I think he needs to start convincing the rest of his comrades to say, can we please try and revisit that thing that's in the shelf, that's gathering dust, the NDP. Right. That's what he needs to do, in my view.
So we're politically stable. Don't mind that I'm the fourth guy in 4 years, but hey, the ship is steady.
Exactly.
Politically, Stephen, it may not be that simple.
No, of course. I think I would probably be tempted if I were appointed as his advisor, and I can say this knowing that I won't be.
This is your tweet.
This is my tweet. I would say, Governor Emeritus, Professor Minister Sir, you're the person who, as we were just reminded, who wrote the Labour Relations Act. You're the one person who could stand up and say, maybe we need to revisit. And by that, what I'm really pointing to is to get going with what President Ramaphosa called his social pact, which we've seen very little evidence of, I'm afraid. And I think what that requires really is a meeting between business, small business, and Labour, organised Labour. And I'm afraid that means COSATU and SAFTU in the same room. Good luck with that. And I think they need to then, and it needs to be a closed room because the constituencies are such that the leaders can't give anything away in public. And I think we're going to have to get away from the idea of complete transparency. As much as I'm going to get thrown out of every journalist organisation and bar I've ever been in for saying that, correctly so, I think we need to hammer out some sort of big deal in our society. As Arjamin was talking about the leadership that Tito Mboweni has shown in the past, perhaps as the person who did author that act and who's held the various positions, he's the one person who can say to COSATU, look, we've got to do something. And at the same time, he's got to say to big business, I can make you do something, so let's.
So it is a question of leadership. Cometh the hour. Well, the hour is here and he is the man. Thank you so much to the two of you for your analysis and your reflections this evening. My guest there, of course, Owen Gomo, Executive Director of the Inkunzi Wealth Group, and Stephen Grootes, political analyst, also the host of SAFM's Sunrise. Stay with us. We've got more after the break.